Welcome to Shop Talks. It's a production of the Ink Kitchen. That's where I'm from. It's a free media company, online resources, etc. Impressions Magazine and Impressions Show are sponsors of this. Got Hanes as a sponsor. And we've got a full lineup today, tomorrow, and Sunday even. And we're going to have a talk here about the future of transfers. We're going to take questions. And then we'll also be available, either Josh in his booth or Jason in his booth. Stan and I will be around if you want to ask questions privately afterwards as well. So welcome. Got Josh Ellsworth from Stahls. Got Stan Banks from T-Shirt Side Hustle. And Jason Murphy from Sanmar, who also used to work in the transfer business and works on the decorating team at Sanmar. So, seems like the golden age of transfers. Is that true?
I think that transfers are more in demand than they've ever been. They're solving a lot of problems. And I'd say we're getting wider on assortment and choices. Sometimes that adds complexity, but it offers lots of options for any business. So I would say, yeah, especially with, it's a little difficult to find skilled labor, I hear, in a lot of communities around the country. And so getting trained and operating a heat press isn't that difficult, so I think that has contributed a lot to the growth of it.
Golden age of transfers, Stan?
Definitely. I think the home-based business is booming off of it, right? They're able to provide a different quality of product than they used to before, and give what a screen print shop possibly could give, where it's not exactly screen printing, but it's the same concepts. Or, you know, we have now the digital age of transfers that's become accessible, and now you can give out quality out of your home, so that audience is now gravitating towards it. Screen print shops are realizing that, you know, there's an efficiency level with high colors and the quantities that they need to produce to make their machines run efficiently. But the mixture of both of those things means that there's a merger where the heat transfer is taking over the industry of a sort, being more accessible, and allowing companies that are bigger shops to make money that on jobs they would normally turn down.
Golden age of transfers there, buddy?
So I would say that today, with the decorators and the Sanmar network that we work with, heat transfers have really come to be their best friend. When you look at anything outside of a t-shirt, right, so hats, bags, totes, anything irregular, impossible to get under a screen print machine, impossible to get embroidery on, a heat transfer saves it every time. And the other big thing I can say about your manufacturers today is they work so well with people like Sanmar to say, okay, we need something that's going on with less temperature. We need something that can go way low. Our fabrics are more sensitive. We're using more rayon. We're making more tri-blends, more organics. And I can tell you today that heat transfers are 100% a decorator's best friend today.
It seems also there's less resistance in the marketplace. I mean, Jacob Edwards, who we've had here, he said people just don't give a shit anymore how their thing is decorated. They just want it on there. They don't care if it was screen printed. But even the word transfers, I think like 10 years ago, people thought of like a Care Bear shirt that was all cracked and had a giant edge on it. And I think transfers have both come a long way and people are more accepting. Are you finding that to be true?
Yeah, and honestly, when I talk to apparel decorators, to your point, it's not even that important to say the way it's decorated anymore. We're putting your brand, we're putting your logo, your message onto apparel. And if we can shift the conversation from how it's made and keep it simple to the fact that I can just do it exactly how you want with your logo, the amount of colors, without compromising the quality of your brand, and we can create something that's gonna last, that's the key. Heat transfers of old still have this, you know, thick feeling, cracking sort of concept, but honestly, heat transfers of new still don't last that long if you apply them with a crappy heat press. And so I think that, you know, getting away from the transfer word, because it's used so broadly when you're talking to your customers, I think will do a lot for your sales process.
Stan, what are you gonna say?
I think what he said is true. Like, I push a lot of my audience now to stop advertising. I'm a screen printer, I'm an embroidery. No, what service are you providing? What type of customer do you want to get to? And those are the things you should be advertising for. So if you're doing schoolwork, I make this for schools or community organizations or family reunions or different things like that. And that basically what Josh is talking about is like, you know, at the end of the day, the end user doesn't care. They don't even know, right? Now you have a crowd of a customer that may come in saying they want something very specific. I want this DTG. They've done a little bit of research, but honestly, you could probably talk them out of it if, as you start the conversation, because they really don't know because they're not the ones printing the garments. So with that being said, if we are educated about what we're doing, we're able to articulate what we have access to. You don't want to turn a customer away because you don't have DTG, right? You want to say, hey, I see you, I know you want DTG, but here's what I can do for you. And if they ultimately want DTG, then you try to outsource it so you don't send that customer away at the end of the day. But with the quality of where the technology is gone and the stigma is completely erased, where it's like, that is still possible for the crafters where they're going to Michael's, they're going to Target to get transfer paper and putting, stuff on shirts. But today, I mean, we got heat transfers that are lasting 70 washes, and they're lasting forever and being able to hold up and withstand the rigorous movements that someone may be doing. And these people aren't doing the worst work. So it's like, I've seen an electrician who's been wearing his shirt. The shirt is ash gray and the print looks perfectly fine. And that's what they care about at the end of the day.
I've seen you actually, people that say they want to get into printing, and you kind of convince them that they don't have to, right? I mean, transfers have made it that even possible, right? Someone that wants to just do some simple stuff now can get started with a heat press, and they have a business, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think what Josh talked about earlier, like the level of expertise. Printing is an art. I got my start screen printing. And when I grabbed the heat press, because I was one of the people that I thought that was the way to go, but I didn't really care about the art of screen printing. I had to learn it because that's what I had access to. But once I grabbed the heat press, and it was a cheap one that broke in 30 days, but I grabbed the heat press, I pressed some shirts, I said, wait, why didn't I start like this? Because it took me months to figure out how to expose the screen with a floodlight, and I never got it right, and I had to go outsource the screens and go ask a friend. But the ease of use, I'm confident enough that somebody walks in my shop and I hire them, I can leave them in 30 minutes. With screen printing, you might be able to teach them to pull a squeegee, but it's a lot of stuff that can go wrong in that process. So, it makes it really, really accessible, really, really easy, and we have quality now that this industry has become accessible to anybody who wants to get into it and is willing to invest in a heat press.
So what are you seeing out there? Actually, I'll twist the question a little bit. Also, I see that people that were screen printers now have embraced transfers, at least for part of our business. I mean, we've won every award for screen printing, and we use transfers all the time. People are like, really? They're like,
in my 28 years in this industry, I have watched the stigma of a heat transfer go from when it came out for sporting goods, wow, this is amazing. I can do letters and numbers, and I can line them up one at a time, and I don't have to make screens. Wow, and then it went, oh, these are thick, they don't work on a t-shirt, they're horrible, they crack, right? And then I watched it start to rise again. And it rose because companies like Stahls, companies like Caesars, they innovate, they get stretchy, they get thin, they get full color, they get dimensional, and they're changing the stigma of a heat transfer. Like everybody said, it's not heat transfer, I'm branding this item for you, right? So that for me has been one of the big things I tell people, it's screen printers, right? Why should you get into heat transfer? I had screen print set up, I had embroidery machines. The cutter and heat press I bought was the most valuable piece in my shop. I made more money on an ROI on that heat press and cutter than I did anything else because I could do hats, I could do bags, I could do anything that would not fit under my screen print machine. And I could personalize, right? So, and then if you look at, like Josh brought a bunch of samples, the way transfers are going today, you've got dimensional, you've got metallic, you've got full color, you've got anything you could possibly think of. Laser etched leather that you don't have to sew down. That's why the industry is changing today. In the future, heat transfers, I don't think we've even hit it yet.
No. All right, so you touched on it just briefly. So where's the equipment at now, and what are we going to see in the future? Like, that's kind of interesting to me, the equipment portion of it, which a lot of people don't think about.
Yeah, so I look at a heat transfer business.
It's mostly irons, right? Is that?
Yeah. Just get yourself lots of irons. That's great. No. So the heat transfer business, when I'm coaching people and talking to people, buy the best heat press you can afford today, and that heat press may be different tomorrow, and it probably will because that's how fast the technology is moving. If you would have bought a heat press 5 years ago, it'd probably still be under warranty with Stahls, but we've come out with the next best thing that we're heating from underneath. And so I would always say go big on your heat press and buy the absolute best you can afford, both in the quality it delivers, which is time, temperature, pressure, needs to do those accurately every time, then you want efficiency. How easy is it to load? How quickly can I move through my work? Are there things I can be doing with the heat presses down? And then really capability and versatility is how many different items can I actually make on this machine, because I want to increase my average order value by being able to decorate more products and more locations on the garments that I'm doing. So the heat press is going to continue to move on, and then I'd say get the best you can afford there. And then you talk about like, how can I make my own transfers? You get into a whole nother mess of conversations on how to do that, but I'd say sink your energy and attention into the best heat press you can afford out of the gate.
Hey, real quick, so that being said, I consult for Sanmar and decorators all over the United States. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a large decorator that finally upgraded to their right press, right? They got beautiful presses now, and they have racks of cheap presses that they bought that are broken, and I keep looking, I'm like, why? Well, that was the cheapest one they had. And I said, what did you learn? He goes, don't buy the cheapest heat press. I said, there you go. So they're 100% right. Get the best you can afford at the time, and it's going to save you so much. Because honestly, the cheaper presses, they break. They're not accurate.
Although they have their place, right, Stan? And I know you have kind of a take on that, right?
Yeah, 1,000. But I agree. The best you can afford. So if today you can afford a $200 heat press, it's best to buy that press because you'll make the investment. Like I said, my first press broke within 30 days, but I had already made money off of it, so I went on Amazon and bought another one. And as I learned about the quality of presses and different ones, I got something better, right? And now I've touched pretty much every heat press that's under maybe $1,200 at this point, right? And they all have their needs and their uses and different things like that. But ultimately, when it comes down to is what can you afford? And I don't want someone to, get what everybody's dream press is the Fusion IQ, right? And it's what, $2,500 or something like that? Is it?
Yeah, it's just short of $3,000. But the dream one's a dual, it's $9,000.
Well, the home business, the Fusion is, and then when you get to the industrial side, the dual Fusion. But ultimately, sometimes you look at the price tag and you think you'll never be able to afford that press, and as a person who helps people get into the industry, a $200 heat press will get you started in a week. You can have that money back, and then you can take the money that you're making on the jobs in order to make more and invest in something better at the time that it does break. So I think it's more important to get into the industry, get started, stop reading reviews and all of that stuff, and get the best that you can afford, like they said. And if you can afford to skip the line and go ahead and get a $1,000 heat press or a $2,000 heat press, then you should do that because that is the best that you can afford. But if you cut corners, you're gonna run into a problem that, people want to get on the internet and leave bad reviews about equipment, but it's a $200 heat press, and we all know in life you get what you pay for of a sort, right? And it's no different when it comes to the heat press.
But I want to reiterate one thing he said. Reinvest in your company, okay? When you have the opportunity and you find a need, don't be scared to invest into your company. It's going to help you grow. It's going to give you more opportunity, and it can make you more efficient so you can get more product out the door. But that's one thing is, start where you can, but invest back in your company. It means a lot.
Can I just drop one comment just to wrap it up? I'll tell you what you can't afford, and that's lost customers. And so I agree there's entry-level presses, but you need to make darn sure it measures time, temperature, and pressure accurately. Otherwise, as soon as you produce the product, you're gonna have issues. So yes, there are presses at all different price points that you should get started with, but if it doesn't measure time, temperature, and pressure accurately, you shouldn't enter until you're able to afford that.
So what is the top of the line press? Like, what does it do? Like, for me, the game changer seemed like the heat from the bottom. Suddenly you can scorch things because you don't see it.
I think that where heat press is going, like top of line, what makes them different from an entry level today is eliminating downtime is a big one. So you literally have to press every item, right? So you want to try to pick up speed. And so laser alignment or heating from the bottom, so sometimes you can do things quicker. And then also giving you the capability, as I mentioned earlier, to load different items or print different items. So now when we're creating a heat sandwich, for lack of a better word, we're able to apply dimensional emblems and patches, and we're able to access so many different premium quality dimensional transfers. It's just going to open up your sales opportunities. And so that's really what you're getting different with those machines.
I guess more accurate measurement of pressure also seems like something that's happened over time.
Yeah, I always say time, temperature, and pressure, and you guys have all talked to people, like Time and temperature, relatively easy. Like I need to make sure what it says is what it's reading on the first garment and the 50th garment. 80% of failed applications that I see are pressure related. And so either you're guessing the pressure wrong because you don't have the right readout, or it's an operator error where you're not loading your item flat, and so you're not actually getting accurate pressure on your print.
All right, so what are we going to see in the future? Like, where do you think it's going to go? How automated? You know, where's the future lie for transfers equipment?
Well, you guys want to crystal ball that one? Future of heat press equipment?
All right, so I've seen some of the future when I was in FESPA last time in Germany, and they have a heat transfer machine that looks like a screen print oval, and it automatically loads and automatically unloads transfers. And you can load it to where you can put a shirt on, a bag on. It goes around and it has suction cups that pull the shirt off and drop it into a bin. Now you have to have a hot peel transfer and all these things, and the system was incredible. So on that side, I would say you're going to see a lot more automation, and Stahls is going to run that, right? You're going to own it.
That's why I let you guys talk. I'm just taking notes and ideas. What do we need to make next?
Well, that's going to be big, and I would say on the print side, there's a lot of good technology coming out. I think we're in the infancy stage of it right now for making your own transfers. Give it a little bit of time, and I think you're going to see some really cool tech.
All right. So, what about the transfers themselves? What's the most advanced stuff now? What are we going to see in the future? Somebody brought some samples.
Yeah, I got some samples here.
All right.
So, I think this is the hot one, right? Direct to film is everything. If you've been walking the floor for any length of time today or looking on the internet, you've heard the term direct to film. It's over in the innovation zone as well.
What is it?
Right, so we are direct printing ink onto a PET carrier sheet, right? And so if you imagined how a transfer should be made, this is it. And we all wish we were there 20 years ago, but we're there now. And so we're jetting CMYK inks onto a sheet or a roll of PET carrier, and then the machine comes down and lays white ink behind your CMYK inks, and then either it jets an adhesive on it, or it runs through a powdering machine to add an adhesive to it, and then runs through a dryer to cure it. And so basically there's no cutting, there's no weeding, we're talking digital printing, really fine detail. It just simplifies all of the choice, in my opinion, that you have to think about, like, what transfer do I order for that? It's this many colors in this quantity? No. In the future, once this advances just a little bit further, it's just going to be direct to film, period, in my opinion.
Yeah, 20 years ago, like Josh was saying, when we were messing around with our first print and cut systems, I mean, we'd be sitting there and we were dreaming about this kind of stuff, saying, why can't we just print it and then back it and go? And all of a sudden here, 20 years later, we finally have it. And so again, what's going to change in the next 5? What's going to change in the next 10? You know, I think you're going to see metallic inks. I think you're going to see more fluorescent inks. It's going to get wide and it's going to get crazy. I can't wait to see what the next 5-10 years brings.
So, what technology changed that allowed that to happen, basically? Is it the sheets or the ink or the adhesives or all of it?
I think it's all of the above, honestly. Like, you saw a lot of the development in PET carriers to where there's vendors on the floor selling PET carrier material today that weren't here even just a couple years ago. And a lot of that growth actually came from digital screen printed transfers from companies like Transfer Express or Supacolor that are making those. And basically the issue with that is they're still screen printing, which is great because when we get to quantity, it costs less. But for low run stuff, it just wasn't effective. So I feel like that was like a jump start to this idea of the carrier development. And then companies have been developing adhesives for the last 10 years, trying to go lower temp, more stretchy, softer feel. And so all of this stuff is just converging into, I think, the optimal process. The only thing that's not there yet is an actual print head that's purpose-built for the process. So it reminds me of those early stages of direct-to-garment printing that we all like to forget on some of the systems.
Yeah, I think he's right because everything has changed as far as the companies that are here selling different materials and different things like that. But ultimately, people are making this stuff at home, and they're trying things out. They're experimenting. There's community around the process of DTF that is really, really strong. You got people who are not having a good time, and then you got people who are having a good time with what's going on. But there's a community around it. Once you find that community, you get all your problems solved, and they're trying to figure out what is the best ink. They're converting printers that weren't even meant to do this and they're doing it efficiently and trying to figure out, where it's going to head. But when a company gets behind the technology and they put it out, the print heads get made specifically for the ink, because that's the true problem right now, is that the print heads aren't made for the thickness or the viscose of the inks, the white inks especially, that is going through the print head. So being able to run ink through the print head is the last piece that I think will give people less of a headache when it comes to doing things themselves within the technology that's going on right now. But people are making it work, and they're making it work with printers that are rather inexpensive. They're converting used printers and making best use out of them. So as that change happens, or the inks change slightly and the print heads get made specifically for it, I think that is the step where it'll become like pretty much good to go for anybody, because you won't run into the maintenance problems that you're running into and the print heads blowing out and all of that stuff that you have to figure out.
It is interesting. You actually can share knowledge with transfers. We were talking earlier, when you're screen printing, like something that works in Maine might not work in Arizona. Something like if you're using certain equipment, your emulsion won't work and it'll work in another situation. Transfers are kind of predictable. You know what I mean? With that time, temperature, and pressure, and the same garment in the same will always work if you share that information.
It's the most
right?
consistent from any decorating technique, because even embroidery, thread changes over time with different humidities. You have different issues you run into with that, and we all know the screen print issues we can run into. But with the other thing, last thing with DTF though, a lot of people ask, well, why? Why would I get into this? If any of you run online stores, to be able to run DTF, to be able to gang up jobs and just let this thing run and peel them off when you need them and print them and apply them, that's incredible. I mean, it's taking the thought process of DTG to a whole nother level, because now we're doing the bags, the hats, the polyester, all the things that DTG is not really good with today.
So I guess, can you output the films with barcodes so that then you know which garment goes on and all that stuff?
Yeah, I actually asked, I was here all day, I've been looking at these DTF companies, and I asked, I said, can you print a barcode on that? And not back it with anything, just print a barcode? And they said, yeah, you can do that. So yeah, you could actually run that through your shop management system, bring up your order, know what it's going on, and ship it out the door.
Definitely what he said. You just want to trim it off before you apply it.
Yeah.
That's all. Because even if it's not backed with adhesive, sometimes some colors will still transfer.
Right.
And so learned that the hard way. So just adds a little bit, but it solves a lot of the headaches through the shop for sure.
So you mentioned textures, like that seems like another big thing. You got any examples there of that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'll start, you mind assisting? Thanks. We'll start some just dimensional patches around so you can feel the patch itself.
This is the hottest thing that we see on our side of the market today, is the patches. Leather edged, domed, you name it, it's all patches.
So what happened? It seemed like in the early days when they tried to make anything with dimension, that you're kind of counteracting. You're pressing something, squishing it while you're trying to get it to, what happened?
Well, this is the category that's been the biggest growing for us as a company. And really, it's all about the lower heat that we talked about earlier, because we used to do some dimensional stuff and even some twills that you'd have to apply with top heat, but it would require so much temperature and so much time that you're damaging the heck out of your garments, most of the garments that you want to decorate. Now that we're heating from top and bottom on a lot of machines in the market, not just ours, we can get to that adhesive quicker, and we can decorate with durability without having to stitch it and without having a scorch mark. And so it really just opens up the branding opportunities. And what I love about it is, when you get to a certain quantity of a heat transfer, you're like, well, I should just screen print it, right? When you're doing dimension and texture, if all you own is a heat press in your business, you don't have to worry about that job going somewhere else. We've have customers that have decorated tens of thousands of pieces with dimensional logos, so you can get really large orders with these types of looks if you incorporate it.
I mean, I know some things just aren't possible. I mean, we're known for our dimensional printing, but you can't do it on a pocket, whereas you can put a transfer on a pocket, or, and it's more predictable, Dimensional printing is really difficult to do with screen printing.
Yeah, and placement's key too, Jason. I don't know what you've seen out there, but people are getting a lot more creative with, where the branding location is when they have a heat press, because it makes you different and it adds more profit and memorability to the garment.
So I've heard one comment that really got me on this about weird placements, and I asked the guy, it was just the oddest, like on the back of his shirt. I'm like, why did you? Just curious. He goes, well, when you walk by somebody and they have a logo here, do you ever look at it? And I was like, no. And he said, you looked at my logo because it was in a weird place. And I'm like, damn, he's right. So yeah, like really cool locations that you don't expect is going to draw somebody's eye to that logo and make you read it.
Yeah, and I think something to add to that, we didn't touch on like interchangeable platens when it comes to heat press. I think that is really, really important. We got pillows and different things like that that are, you use to supplement that, but heat presses with interchangeable platens and being able to have access to different, they got a tag-along press, being able to do that at one time, or being able to hit a sleeve, and a hat press is great. I probably use my hat press more for neck labels than anything else, but just having something that can interchange and you can put it on a different size and do a onesie and then change it out and do something else, because location is what matters at this point, right? Like, it'll set you apart from somebody else. It makes this brand stand out because they got an odd location, and it makes it really, really easy when you can just load a plat that is made for what's going on. It's way more efficient than inserting pillows and cardboard. I talked to a guy last week using cardboard, and I'm like, you can get pads, but it makes it way more efficient, get your job done when you can just load a different different platen and finish a job.
All right, so dimensionality, what's new in that, or like how far is that going at this point?
Yeah, so I don't know. Everybody just wants more, and we're growing in height on every day, it seems. So faux leather patches, genuine leather, you're starting to see more colors there, more unique color combinations, I would say. We even have some customers that are experiencing with UV printing on leather, which is kind of a cool technique to add more color and patterns into the design on demand. We're seeing a lot, I would say, in the puff embroidery space. Not exactly an easy process to do, but being able to apply with just a heat press with a thicker foam pad to make sure you're getting the pressure. So we're seeing a lot of innovation in the types of cover sheets that we use that make different applications possible, and not only possible, but durable. So something that can be laundered 50 times and not need stitched and not fall off.
Let's go an opposite dimension.
Oh, that's cool, yeah.
Okay, so this is different. So you've had everybody trying to go high, right? Let's get more dimension, more dimension. Before we got shut down, and the last good trade show I was at, I saw a transfer that was, I believe it was called Lenticular, that it has an image printed in the bottom that as you looked at it, it made a different change as you went side to side, and it was a heat transfer. And that was probably one of the coolest things I've seen. So going away from that dimension to a flat dimension, that still shows a different look on both sides. It was really cool.
Yeah, the new NFL store that opened in Las Vegas this past weekend, they have a lenticular patch, they have a sports ball press, a hat press, 2 heat presses, so it's really powering the experience of it as well and letting people customize and personalize, put their Instagram handle on it or whatever they want to do.
So besides the equipment and the transfers, knowledge is definitely, I know something, Stan, you talk about a lot. So what's going on there for people to gain the knowledge besides going to shop talks? How do people learn about transfers? What's going on in that? How's that progressing?
I mean, I think being here at a place like this where you get to go see all of these machines and you try to figure out, where it's headed and all of that stuff is really, really important. So this show is important. The fact that we're able to get out and see it in person, but online, Josh does great classes. Myself, other YouTube influencers and people who are out trying different things are putting out great content. Some of these companies are putting out good content when it comes to their machines, but ultimately, I think the community is built, right? Like, and if you want to learn about anything, there's a community for it. And like I said earlier, there's a DTF community. Good or bad, things are in these groups that you can learn from people who are actually doing the work every day.
Where's the DTF? Where do people?
Facebook groups. Facebook groups. Facebook groups is the start. Obviously, like I said, the content is on YouTube and stuff like that. So if you want to get into anything, you need to get into these communities because it's one thing to hear like myself or Jason or Josh over here speak and any company talk about their equipment, but when you get into these groups, you see people really doing the work every day and really putting it to use and what their issues are, what they would do differently. And I think that's big. And I think, being here, You know, it's great to see these booths, but you sit next to somebody that can help you change your business because they're either going where you're trying to go or they've been where you are and they've have some experience that they could give you some advice that some company can't give you. And I think that is the piece that's truly important.
So I'm going to back this up in a little bit different area. Same exact thought though. My kids, I learn a lot from my kids. They're old teenagers up into their 20s now, and I always ask them when they go buy something, I'm like, what did you do when you decided you wanted to buy that? And they said, well, first I want to go research the manufacturer, okay? So always research your manufacturers, know what they do, go to their websites, watch their data, right? Watch their video, everything you can consume about what they offer. And then I said, well, then what do you do? Well, then I go online and I go to Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and I read what people have to say about the company, about the product in real life environment, right? And I said, okay, well, then what do you do? Well, then I go research the price on Amazon and here and here and here and here, and I find the best place to buy it. But what's key about that is the crowdsourced information is what they rely on, the social information. It's not just go and buy because they said, it's, I like that, now let's go see what people said, and then I'm going to go buy it.
Yeah,
so do your research.
I'd like to add on, and like in that example, and what I was thinking even before you shared that was like, what separates most folks that are going to innovate from others who won't is just first the curiosity. Like when you hear this, when you go see a demo, you should be thinking, how can I add my little twist to that? How can I make it different? And then it's being action oriented. So when you get a concept, keep good notes, take a sample and try it. Set aside some time, set aside some budget to try to heat apply some fabric you've never seen before that you don't know if you can decorate. And don't be afraid to budget some money and some time to make mistakes. And I think what you'll find is you'll learn so much about an application that's going to come 6 months down the road that you picked up, and it's just putting it in action and being curious about the products you're creating and how they're made.
And share. I mean, I'm telling you, this industry has changed so much in the last 10 years. It went from nobody talking to everybody, right? It's like, no, that's mine, this is my idea, this is my idea. This guy and his crew, they're the ones who started the change because they got online with Ink Kitchen and just started saying, yeah, I had that problem, this is how I fixed it, right? Started a community. Now you got all these screen printers talking to each other and sharing data. And it's the same thing with Stan. Stan gets online, makes some of the coolest stuff. He doesn't keep it to himself. He shares with everybody, this is how I did it. You know, you can help build this community. Just get on, try some cool stuff and share it for people. And you're never gonna know who you meet. I've had printers become some of the best friends and they were competitors before, and now they share business back and forth when they're out of capacity. So share, get to know the people around you.
There is a lot of work out there. It seems like it's better to cooperate than to compete.
Yeah, if anybody has capacity, please hit me up because we get asked every day who has capacity.
I will take some, you guys, any more comments or should I take some questions?
Let's take some questions. Y'all have to have questions.
All right, who's got a question? All right. All right, so the question is the texture of DTF in particular versus screen printing.
It's all about how you design your artwork, okay? So if you have a big blocky piece and you compare that to a screen print that's the same exact print, they're both gonna feel thick and blocky, right? Unless you do water-based. So it's how you design that. I would personally look at something that has a big blocky area and think, what can I knock out? What can I let a garment color show through? How can I make space? Because the more space you make in a design, whether you're doing DTF, transfers, or screen print, will make it softer.
And my challenge to you is, does your customer really care? We're printers, right? So we're analyzing every shirt we see in the store and in the mall, but does the end user really care, right? And if you can watch this, regardless of what it feels like, you do get some customers like, oh, this feels a little bit too thick or something like that. And what Jason said is exactly right. How you design it will make a difference. Knocking black out on a black shirt will make anything feel a lot softer, whether that's screen print or a transfer. But I think we get so critical of what we're putting out, and our customer honestly doesn't care, right? If most of them. And if you have ones that are picky, you have to just, obviously choose the method that they go with. But 99% of the time, and I get into this argument a lot, like the people who are coming in to order shirts, the school or whatever the case is. I've used a transfer on one job. I've used the same thing. I ordered it. I screen printed this time. I used transfers this time. They put the shirts on the kids, and the kids go run out onto the field and play, and they don't even care. So
wouldn't you also say us as being industry, right? Everybody in here, we're the most critical. Okay, we're the ones picking this stuff apart. Who doesn't go through a store and pick apart everything you see, right? I still do. My wife hates it, right? So it's just what we do, because I'm like, oh, that's printed crooked. That's horrible. That's thick. I don't like that. But I don't think they care. But if you look at the shirt Josh has, that's the proper way to design something and it be soft.
So can I point out a couple specific tips? So you guys have
Actually,
covered...
I want to talk about this one first, actually.
Go for it.
So, this is a great example, because if you were screen printing, you're at a lot of different cross purposes here. If you want it to be this bright, well, it's kind of got to have thick ink if you're screen printing. Do you want washability? There's always washability versus like brightness. There's the feel of it versus how long it's going to stay on there. Like, there's a lot of different things, and you don't always get everything that you want. This could have been improved with the artwork if you really wanted it to be soft, because it's a big solid thing no matter what you did. Yeah, you could have done sublimation, but it probably wouldn't be this bright. Then are you selling it at a store where people feel it, or are you selling it online and it's only on looks that they're going to go for it? There's a lot of factors to it. You're right, though, it feels kind of crappy.
So
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
Oh, I was going to say, on a sweatshirt, it wouldn't matter.
Right.
If it was on a sweatshirt, that would be really hard to screen print, and then the feel doesn't matter because it's a thick sweatshirt. So there's a lot of factors. It's not that simple.
Yeah, three points. Knocking out your artwork. When we're talking about direct-to-film printing, don't think of it like we think of print cut, which we're involved in as well, because we don't have to weed. So we can do really thin lines, and we should create...
What's wrong with weed?
Time, and time is money, right? So we can be a lot more creative with knocking out detail. I know where you're going there. I'm not following. On the art. Next is not all DTF inks and adhesives are the same.
Yep.
And so it's important to explore the different options that are available to you from transfer suppliers or from the machine you're looking to invest in to see how they look and feel and react on the garment. Some stretch, some are softer, some are more matte, some are more glossy. So there's differences in the formula that each company is using. And then lastly, and I think most importantly, is the blank selection. If we put something on an inexpensive, open-ended carded cotton, it's going to have a little bit more of a weight and a feel to it, right? If I put it on a nice ring-spun cotton or a tri-blend, even if it's the same weight of fabric, it tends to just feel better because of the fabric itself. So think about the canvas that you're decorating. You can go a heavier weight to get a softer feel on the fabric instead of changing your design. So these are all factors that, again, you need to be curious about, you need to experiment with, and that way you can explore all of these and how you ultimately sell to your client and become that expert. Says, you know what? Your design's going to look better on a ring spun. It's going to be this price, but here's why you're going to love it so much more.
And actually, I learned that from you, Rick, because I had sent a bunch of designs to you, and you're like, why are you putting that on that shirt? I'm like, well, that's what we wanted. And he goes, no, that's not designed for that kind of fabric. Can you do this, this, and this?
It does start with design, yeah.
I've learned more from my decorators about designing the design to work with the apparel your customer chose. And that is so key, and it's very difficult.
More and more customers want short runs and all kinds of different garments. So, maybe that transfer works on a lot of different things. Like maybe it works on a tri-blend and a white shirt and a sweatshirt, and that would be why you decide to do that. So you lost the hand, but it worked on all the different items, and that might not be true of some other transfer. Other questions?
No.
Yeah. So the question was, are all transfers the same? Absolutely not, right? There's a bunch of different companies that you could buy from. Ultimately, you just have to try them all out, in my opinion, and just see who you like, what price points you want to be at, what quality you're willing to go for. But there's different processes. There's print and cut. There's DTF. There's screen printed transfers. And some are cost effective in other ways. So if I have a Little League football team that's trying to go for the cheapest option, I'll use 15-cent transfers. But I don't like to use 15-cent transfers. But in this case, they want shirts at like $4.25. and they want 500 or so, and you got to deliver what you have to deliver at that point, where you can't go for a more expensive, a full color transfer. It just doesn't make sense, and that's what they're used to paying. So in that case, I've done jobs that typically will be screen printed and use a transfer, but they're not all the same. They're not all the same formulas. No ink here is the same. You got to use poly. You got to use just different stuff that you got to use, additives for different things. So there's a reason that there's formulas, and there's a reason that there's a Ultra Color Max, and there's all of these different transfers. There's actually a reason, and you can apply everything to every garment. And even if you could, sometimes it's just not the best option, right? Like, what he just said is true. That design may work on everything that you use, but you're gonna lose something. And if your customer cares about how it feels, you may have to go with a completely different formula for what you're trying to do. I think they got like vintage formulas, and it's a lot of different stuff. So no is the short answer, but you just got to test them all out. And
how many companies do you think there are that make some product worth looking at? Probably
for
at least
transfers?
a dozen, probably, right?
For heat transfer, I actually know this number because we actually do the research.
Yeah.
There are 36 companies in the United States that create transfers. Okay,
Wow.
36.
And then
Now, out of those
there's all the
36,
people make stuff where you can make your own.
yeah,
besides
but
that.
out of those 36, there's maybe a handful that I would say buy from.
And then
okay.
you're probably the biggest of the transfer companies, or in some ways.
Oh,
How many
hands down.
different products do you have? Like,
So when I do a presentation, usually I like to say it's the umbrella of heat transfers, and I do kind of like this word cloud on the board.
Yeah.
And we're not even getting specific to like choices, but like reflective. Well, when we get down to it, there's actually 4 different reflective transfers that you can buy, right? If we go a level down, there's glitter, and then there's glitter that is reflective, and then there's puff. But that's part of the beauty, I think, of a heat press. Again, all of the difficult work, in my opinion, is baked into the transfer if it's done right. And all you really have to think of is my heat press is my oven. That transfer that I bought is my frozen pizza. It's going to tell me what to set the oven for. And as long as I do that and load the garment right and apply the settings correctly and my heat press is accurate, you're going to be able to explore literally thousands of finishes. So you can pick something for your client that you want to sell. And I'd say boil it down. Simple is better, right? People get paralyzed by choice. So I would never serve up thousands of choices to somebody. I would present a good, better, best, put their price point right in the better slot, and make yourself a little more profit at the best. And never discount your profit. Make yourself a little more profit with an economy option. That way when they say, hey, can I get that nice ring spun district shirt at a cheaper price? No, but I can give you this open-ended carded cotton t-shirt at the price that you want. Which one do you want?
Yeah.
Lots of choices.
Spend the time to know your companies too. If you're talking to somebody in this building, they're probably pretty reputable, right? But take the time to look at their social media, see what kind of responses they're getting back, who's talking about them. Follow people like Stan. He's already tried it all, right? So he's going to have some really good feedback for you. And I would say that if you're looking at a transfer company today, if they don't offer some autumn of education, they're not worth buying from. They have got to have good video, good product, and good support to be able to help you. And like Josh said, time, temperature, pressure, if they don't provide you with a recipe, they're not worth buying from.
Yeah, and 99% will do free samples. Like almost every company on this floor does some sort of free sample. They want you to put your hands on the equipment here and try it yourself. Take advantage of that. Spend time in the booth. Explore the samples on your own if the rep's busy. Just grab something and start pressing. Nobody's going to frown on that. And then when you get back, you'll have all of these samples that you've explored over the course of, a few days.
I think one thing that we all left out is like your garment is the real reason that there's not one transfer, right? The materials and fabrics and stuff like that is ultimately what makes you, like, you got finishes, like what he talked about, the glitters, the reflectives and all of that stuff. But the makeup of the garment is what changes and which causes the true formulas, like the adhesive that goes into allowing it to stick to a polyester versus a cotton versus a nylon and all of that stuff. So that's the ultimate, the thing that I will pay attention to is what my garment is made of that I'm trying to decorate.
Yeah, and to add to that, I like to say, like, you're going to have your core bucket of transfers that you'll use that are going to go to cotton, poly, any blends, and work like that, right? And that's going to be 95% of most people's business unless you specialize, which is good. And then you have the special finish, as Stan mentioned, and then I call it special function. That just helps me categorize it in my brain. And so I need to go to special function if I'm decorating to a nylon or something stretchy that's out of the box, or maybe something that's sublimated and I'm worried it's going to bleed through my print. And so you'll be able to understand this core first, and then you'll be able to build on that knowledge by understanding finishes and then special function based on your blank.
All right, we got other questions out there? All right, that's a good
Trade
question.
shows.
So the question is,
Come here.
how do we stay on top with things changing so fast and the technology improving? How do we stay on top of it?
First, the thing is you got to realize that you don't have to stay on top of it. If your business is working, then let your business work, and then you get out and go do the research. Everybody like in the industry chases the next piece of equipment because somebody else got it or it's a brand new. Tomorrow is going to be a whole new DTF system that is going to be better than what's out, and now you invested 30 grand into this one, and then you got a new one. You're going to go get that one too. So you want to make sure that the stuff that you're having right now first is running at its max, and you're opting out, and then paying attention to not necessarily what equipment is new, what new technology is out, but what are your customers asking you for that you can't provide? And if you do that, you'll always go invest in the right piece of equipment. So I'm trying to get people to change their mind of like, hey, should I buy this vinyl cutter, or should I buy this, or should I get into this DTF machine? Well, I can't answer that just off the basis of you asking me what should you buy next, because I don't understand your business. And then if anybody tells you like you should just get this, it's not gonna be accurate, right? So what is your customer asking you for today that you can't provide? And if you get enough of that request, then in your mind you should be like, all right, well, I done got asked this 100 times. I need to figure out first who I can outsource this to grab that income. And then the same thing you talked about earlier, and then like later on down the line, do I want to invest in this? Take the time to figure out, you know, I got it in my business because I'm outsourcing. I see my income coming in. How much am I spending on this thing that I'm outsourcing? Oh, I just spent 100 grand in this year. All right, well, let me look into this technology, how much it's gonna cost, and then you start to do your research about what is gonna be the best thing. So first thing I would do is say, outsource it, take in your income, figure out who can provide you the service, and then analyze how much you're spending, and then go out and try to find the best technology to produce that for yourself.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to say too, when you're buying new technology, and I'm speaking from a personal experience here, don't go out and buy everything under the sun. Okay, because you're never going to master anything that way. You're going to be bouncing around. What do I do here? What do I do there? And you're never going to really master it. And I did that. I went out, bought embroidery machines, screen print, this and that. It took me a long time, a lot of mistakes, a lot of heartaches. If you're going to invest into something for your business, invest into something like Stan says, your customers are asking for, and that you have the passion to master. Because take the time to master whatever technology you buy, because you're going to find efficiencies and you're going to find more ways to sell it.
Although I will say, of all the pieces of equipment you can buy, a good transfer press will always pay for itself.
Amen.
It's one of the very, very few things that you can count on that there's something wrong with you. You're an idiot if you can't make some money off a good transfer machine.
Yeah, any size shop. Like, I tell people, like, doesn't matter. You invest in a heat press. If you go into a shop with 13 automatic machines, there's heat presses in there. So it's not a bad investment at all, and you can do so much more with it.
Yeah, and just to, I love what's being shared. A lot of people forget about time and calculating that and paying themselves when you're a small business, and they forget about overhead. That the space costs something, that equipment that's depreciating costs something. All of that has a cost to it that should go into your equation. So if you're not reaching your financial goals, odds are you have too many toys that you're wasting time with, which is more valuable selling or marketing or actually producing garments, or that you've went a little bit too wide on your capability. To Jason's point, you bought everything under the sun, and we're not going to get a return on that equipment. And so I would be very selective and specific about what processes I bring in-house to do it all. And I would, because I've seen people get kind of paralyzed by just, yes, the finance company wants to write you a 50 grand budget that you can go out and get the best of everything, but that's not the best move for your business. And so I would definitely be very methodical in your approach. And the point is made, start with the customer, right? If you're getting price pressure today, I'd say you don't understand your customer. That's the problem. If you understand your customer, you'll walk through this trade show and everything will become crystal clear on how I craft unique value for them with what I create. And then I won't have the price pressure because they'll actually value what I'm presenting. I'll have the technology to create the looks that they want on the fabrics they want. And so that should drive all of your decision making, is your market segments that you want to reach and develop. But just to be specific on the question, to stay up on latest technology, following and subscribing to the Ink Kitchen. Impressions Magazine's website always has good press releases. Like, subscribe, and click that notification bell on T-Shirt Side Hustle, on Stahls TV, on Sanmar University, on sanmar.com. And so a lot of the suppliers in here, they have educational channels that you can just subscribe and follow that feed, because we get to come here, once a year, and enjoy it in person.
All right. Maybe any final words here?
Thank you for coming out. We were all a little bit worried, to be honest with you, so thank you all for being here. We missed you guys, so glad everybody's back.
Any last words, Stan?
Same thing Jason said. Thank you guys for coming. It's a lot of more talks, a lot more great information to be shared with you guys. A lot of good speakers coming this weekend, and yeah.
I mean, these guys are up here for a reason. I carefully choose who I have here, and they're all very gracious with their time and knowledge, and take advantage while you're here. Josh is over at the Stahls booth, which is near the entrance, actually, right near the entrance. Stan's walking around. Jason's at the Sanmar booth, which is in the back, and they're very open to answering questions. You have a free university here at your disposal. So thanks to Josh Ellsworth from Stahls, Stan Banks from T-Shirt Side Hustle, and Jason Murphy from Sanmar. And thanks to Haynes, Impressions, and thanks for coming out.
All right, appreciate you all.